Here we are at question 1 of logical reasoning drill set number 11 over at lawhub.lsac.org. As is the case with all of our logical reasoning questions, we're going to select a highlight tool first and then read the question stem to identify what we're being asked to do with this somewhat unique two-speaker structure. And we don't want to engage the two speakers up front because there's a lot of different ways that we may be asked to address those statements, and we don't even know if this is going to be an argument task or an inference task, so it's really incumbent upon us to look at the question stem first. And number 1 reads, Nakagawa's and Galden's remarks provide the most support for holding that they disagree about the truth of which one of the following statements. So we see provide the most support, so that should indicate we're looking at a variation on an inference task. So I'm just going to highlight Nakagawa and Galden's remarks most support that they disagree about, and we'll just leave it open from there. So we've just got to find an answer choice that N and G, I'm just going to call them N and G from this point on, and honestly, you may not even try to pronounce mentally their names up front either. Just turn them into initials. It's cool. You know them well enough to do that, or you just don't want to waste the time on the timed LSAT trying to figure out exactly how to pronounce their names. But nonetheless, we're going to now read their statements individually and highlight them separately so we can distinguish what they're saying without considering the validity of their arguments, if there is an argument, and instead just focusing on those statements as facts, even if they are opinionated, to determine which of the answer choices they are committed to being on opposing sides of. So, end statements read, when making business decisions, we who manage the company are obliged to take into account the public interest as well as normal business concerns like efficiency and expense. So while this is just one sentence, I'm probably inclined to split this into two statements. So we've got the first statement about making business decisions. We who manage the company are obliged to take into account the public interest. And then we've got the second part of Nakagawa's statements, which says they also need to consider normal business concerns like efficiency and expense. So those are the two statements that we can just split up. And now we're going to go to Galden and switch our color one more time. So Galden says, I disagree. Well, that's a straightforward statement, and I'm going to put it in yellow so it contrasts very directly. Then we see Galden says, our obligation to the company's stockholders requires us to choose the most profitable course of action allowable by law without regard for public interest. And I could even go to my little underline tool to have this stand out. So I know that this is what G believes those who manage the company are obligated to do. They've got to pay attention to stockholders and pick the most profitable course of action allowable by law without regard for public interest, even though in the orange here, N said they had to take into account the public interest. So now we're going to go to our answer choices with a highlight tool selected, and we're going to try to find answer choices that these speakers are not committed to disagreeing about and maybe aren't committed to have an opinion about at all. So starting with choice A, managers usually try to maximize profit without regard for public interest. Now, the details matter everywhere on the LSAT and probably nowhere more than on inference tasks with logical reasoning. We see this phrase, maximize profit. Well, Nakagawa doesn't actually talk about profit at all when discussing the normal business concerns. It's just talking about efficiency and expense. We don't know anything about maximizing profit for Nakagawa. Furthermore, for Galden, most profitable course, maybe not, that's maximizing profit. So either way, choice A is going to require additional information about specifically maximizing profit to commit the two speakers to be on opposite sides of that issue. It can be eliminated at this time. Then choice B, managers should always do whatever their company's stockholders want them to do. Well, we know that there's an obligation to the company's stockholders for Galden, and we don't talk about the stockholders for N, and this idea always do whatever their stockholders want. That seems exceedingly extreme. Several reasons to eliminate B. It's gone. Then choice C, managers should choose to pollute the environment if it is legal and more profitable than not doing so. Now, this is where you get into trouble. You might think to yourself, we didn't talk about polluting the environment. but we did talk about being legal and more profitable. And that comes directly with Golden. Golden says the most profitable course of action allowable by law, which matches legal, and without regard for public interest, which would be polluting the environment, would be against the public interest in theory, and more profitable would be the most profitable course of action by comparison. But N is not going to agree with that because that would mean you are not taking into account the public interest. So C, they are directly committed to being on opposing sides of, even though they introduce a kind, or the LSAC introduces a kind of just hypothetical situation of polluting the environment as something that would be against the public interest. You need to recognize it would fit under that categorical requirement, however. And so, C, definitely they're going to be on opposing sides of, even though there's this idea of polluting the environment that if you're not careful, you might say, well, that's out of scope. But it would be something that is at least ancillarily related to public interest. Now, continuing on to choice D, managers should never do what the public wants them to do. We don't actually talk about the public holistically, should never do as extreme. Once we liked C, we can go briskly through D and eliminate it for that reason. And then choice E, very similarly, managers should give equal weight to both profit and public interest. Well, again, equal weight, nobody says it's got to be literally equal, so that too is extreme in a different fashion. And you can see how even though choice C introduced a new concept, it was definitely within the purview of that categorical concern regarding public interest that was clearly at issue between the two speakers. And you can see how by leaning into eliminating for answer choices that are extreme, that need additional information, you can find the correct answer of C and not get trapped in the concept of out of scope too liberally on this problem or any other future inference question task you may encounter in your LSAT prep.